sounds more normal. Okay. Do I need to start over? And so it's an alternative. It's an option, like Jimmy Carter took. It's an option that focuses, well, instead of life-prolonging treatments that may be either difficult to undertake, maybe the medical treatments cause more symptoms than they help. And sometimes the treatments that are available at end of life are just not in alignment with your goals or your wishes as a person, as a family, as a system. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they describe the hospice philosophy this way. Hospice care provides compassionate care for people in the last phases of incurable disease or simply aging, so that they may live as fully and comfortably as possible. The hospice philosophy accepts death as the final stage of life. It affirms life, but does not try to hasten or postpone death. It concerns itself with providing the individual and the family with support and choices so that everyone can be fully present at end of life. Does anyone know who's considered to be the founder of the modern hospice movement? Have you heard the name before? Yes. Her name is Dame Cicely Saunders. And her philosophy that drove her effort to create hospice is pretty simple and similar. She's quoted as saying, "You matter because you are you, and you matter to the end of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also to live until you die." Cicely Saunders was born in 1918. She was born in Hertfordshire, England, and she studied at Oxford University during World War II. She studied to become a nurse and then eventually a medical social worker, and she found herself serving in medical care after World War II. She was introduced to the conditions, and she saw a great deal of suffering among the patients she was serving. So much suffering that her efforts to help them drove her to go on and study even further to become a physician so that people would actually listen to her, as she was told, in order to further her practice and to advocate for and to promote the healthcare that she was starting to develop. The hallmark of her approach to treating pain and suffering was new at the time. And she developed what came to be known as the idea of total pain, the idea that someone's pain that they're experiencing, especially at end of life, is far more than just physical symptoms, but it's a whole interconnected network of social, spiritual, psychological, and physical concerns. And so her effort was to create a system of support and healthcare that can approach holistically all these concerns. Early in her career, she had a patient. It was a 40-year-old Polish Jewish immigrant who she was serving in London. And together in their conversations, they dreamed of a home, an actual place for this philosophy to happen, a home for dying people to find peace in their final days. And when he died, he left Cicely Saunders 500 pounds to go towards helping to establish such a place. And eventually, she was able to found St. Christopher's Hospice, which was the first hospice of its kind in the world in London, which is still open for business today, serving people. In an interview she kind of summed up her thoughts on what hospice can offer someone who's terminally ill. And I thought it was really, really beautiful. I want to share that. She talks about someone in hospice. It's a person who happens to have a terminal illness. She goes on to describe that, and if you can keep the terminal illness in control, or to keep it controlled, and really as much as possible out of the picture, then that person has a chance of going on, being themselves, and doing what they want to do. And time can gather up a whole lot of important things, even in a matter of a few days or a few weeks. Our goal is to give people the time for the healing and the closure that she knew could happen at end of life. So what does it take to be eligible for hospice, you might wonder? It's kind of complicated, but it's also pretty simple. The eligibility for hospice is that if your attending physician, if you have one, or the hospice physician certifies you as terminally ill with a medical prognosis of 6 months or less to live, if the illness runs its normal course. So there's a lot of room for interpretation, meaning-making, understanding, which is a constant battle that the nurses, the doctors, the families are in a constant negotiation of what it means, how you're doing, how we can help, and when we can't help as hospice. So with that, let me turn it over to, now that we're eligible, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Barnes. She's a social worker with Transitions, and her primary job with them is to do admissions visits. And she is more often than not in homes with families and patients who are beginning the journey of hospice. So she'll come and talk to you about kind of what it's like beginning that process.
Thank you, Justin. I am Elizabeth Barnes. I'm a Okay, down? How's that? As Justin mentioned, I'm a part-time medical social worker at the Stewart Health Center, and I'm also a part-time hospice admissions social worker. And I've been with the Transitions for now almost 6 years. Prior to working as an admissions social worker, I actually went back and got my Master's of Social Work because I had been a volunteer for about 5 years in hospice. My role as an admissions social worker is to provide appropriate education on hospice philosophy and the services that we provide. And I explained that the nature of hospice care is palliative rather than curative treatment. And the focus of hospice care is to relieve pain and symptoms related to a terminal illness, and to provide comfort and support to both the patient and their family and or caregivers. I explained that the hospice services include an assigned registered nurse, a certified nursing aide, a licensed social worker, and a spiritual care counselor. And the registered nurse is also the assigned case manager, and she does the overall coordination of care. Okay? All right. The hospice nurse works with the patient's physicians to provide pain control and symptom management. A certified nursing aide is also available on the team to provide and she's actually under the direction of the nurse, and she provides personal care to the patient as permitted by the patient and or the family and based on their individualized plan of care. A medical social worker is available also, provided for social and emotional support. Social workers are licensed clinical counselors who are available to talk through the end-of-life discussions and explore present and future caregiving needs. And also available is a spiritual care counselor. And of course, the counselor provides the pastoral care and connects the patients and families with nearby spiritual leaders, if necessary, and or faith communities. The spiritual care counselor also assists in funeral and memorial planning. Along with introducing the care team, I also provide a full explanation and a copy of the privacy policies, the patient's bill of rights, patient responsibilities, and the general safety in the patient's home. The documents and information that are really important at each admission are advanced care directives. If the family or the patient has them available, it's always important to have those available at the admission. If not, perhaps the social worker would follow up later. And that would include, of course, the healthcare power of attorney document. A durable power of attorney document is important too, but what's really important is to know who can speak on the behalf of their loved one if they're not able to speak for themselves. And it's also nice to know what the wishes of the patient is during the time of the admission too. And those documents are important to have, but again, getting those in place is really important. As well as a MOST form or a DNR form if the patient has made the decision about if they're no longer able to speak for themselves, or if they're in the condition where their heart has stopped or there's no more pulse, is their wish to pass on naturally. So those discussions, it's always nice to have those discussions before a patient enters into hospice, but it's important during the time of the discussion about hospice. So, and also the funeral planning. Oftentimes families haven't decided on funeral homes, but again, these are conversations that families can start to have if their loved one has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So I actually, when I meet with family members, and so many of you have experience with hospice, and so you probably know a lot of this information, but the admission visit is probably the longest visit that families have with the hospice team, and it could take up to 2 hours. But it's really important to have family members at that first visit and to come with questions. And that's what we're prepared to answer questions. And even if there's a question after I leave, we always leave the number to call. And it is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service. So when your assigned nurse is not available, perhaps, maybe she or he is on another call, there's always a nurse that would call the family back. And any time of the day or night, there's always a number, it's a person to call and to speak with, and even to come out in the middle of the night if need be. I'm now going to pass it along to a registered nurse, Charlotte, and which most of you know, and so she can talk to you about her role as a hospice nurse. Thank you.
Hello. How are y'all? So those who might not know me, I'm the outpatient services director here at Springmore. Prior to that, I worked for Transitions for 6 years as a team leader, and then prior to that, I got to hospice because I always thought I wanted to be an oncology nurse. I was an oncology nurse, and we did end-of-life care there. I was at Duke Raleigh, and genuinely realized that I enjoyed the journey of helping people live to the end of their lives, or to live their lives, whenever that end was going to be, about who they are and not about the treatment. So I was in the wrong place. So that's why I wound up in hospice. And I kind of also get to do that here by letting people live as completely and thoroughly as possible. So the first thing I want to say, just as a side note, we are all, by chance, happenstance, member or people who used to work for Transitions. This is not a publicity for Transitions in any way. We are talking about hospice as far as hospice is concerned through your Medicare benefit, okay? I am going to speak to a little bit about what hospice is here at Springmore, but Medicare says that you can choose any hospice you want. Now, that being said, we do at Springmore have a very long-standing relationship with transitions over the course of the years. We do, they are the primary ones that we use here, but that doesn't mean it has to be your choice. So I want to just put that as a caveat if that should ever come up in conversation. As a team leader, what I did is I supervised nurses, social workers, and spiritual care folks in the day-to-day operations with their patients. And that's my first key words of advice, which is going along with the total pain concept. Medicare says that you be offered a social worker, a spiritual care person, and a nurse. And then obviously can also have an aide. The only one that they require that you have to accept is the nurse. Always accept the whole team. Always, 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 because then they can address the total pain aspect of what hospice is about. So not all your nurses are equipped to be spiritual care people. Not all your nurses are equipped to be social workers and to put all of that on them. Or also the nurse is focused on the patient to some degree. And yes, they look at everybody, but the beautiful thing about hospice is we get to look at everybody. Because when someone's sick, everyone's affected, right? When someone's dying, everyone's affected. Everyone around them is being affected. And so we get to, care for all of the people that are being affected, not just the patient. So that's why I always say you can always turn someone down later on. If you accept the social worker and everything's going well and you don't see a need for their visits any longer, they can stop. Same thing with a spiritual care person. They can stop. But if you don't start with the full team, it makes it much more difficult journey. So to help yourselves out, I would always say that. And also if you're ever talking to anybody, any of your friends in your lives, these are keys of words of wisdom. The other words of wisdom would be, even if you're talking about hospice with a family member who may be somewhere else, not local. I always recommend a hospice when I'm talking to folks that they have a hospice home. And so what I mean by that is there's levels of care in hospice. Hospice is in the home, okay? It is not bedside nursing. There will not be someone living in your home taking care of you. We are there to support the families to take care of the patient. So what that means is that's home care. And then if someone's symptoms get out of control and they can no longer be managed in the home, then it goes to what's called general inpatient level of care. So general inpatient level of care can be completed. Every hospice has to be able to do it. But some hospices are going to do that in a hospital. They're not going to do that in a hospice home. So part of this is to maybe be comfortable, right? That's part of hospice is to be comfortable. There's only a certain level of comfort you're going to get in a hospital. Even to the best that they can try as hard as they want to try, but it's only going to look as good as it can. It's not going to look all that great. Hospice homes are designed for exactly that. They are designed like hospitals, but with comfort in mind. I will use transitions as an example. If you're on a stretcher and you're looking up, there are clouds above. It was designed from the perspective of what would a patient see. There are patios where someone can be rolled out and go out and be outdoors, right? So once again, I'm not advocating for transitions. What I am saying is, though, when you're looking, And when you're talking to family members in Florida or California or wherever you are, and they're trying to figure this out, and they're like, oh my God, I've got this list of like 10. I don't know what to do. A simple way to ask that is ask if they have a hospice home. It's a really kind of good way to look for some criteria you might be looking for. Also looking at levels of care, there's a thing called respite care, and this is also part of your Medicare benefit. Respite care addresses, once again, the family, and the fact is that caregiving is a real disease. It's hard. People need a break. And so what respite care does is respite care says, all right, we're going to take your loved one, and they may have them, if they have a hospice home, they might go to a hospice home if there's availability. They may go to a local nursing home. But that's paid for through the Medicare benefit. And that is for the caregivers to have a break. It might be because there's a wedding out of town, right? And you're trying to get to this wedding and everyone wants to go, and you need to be able to do that because everyone needs to be able to continue living their lives. Nothing just stops because someone is sick. So that is another piece of the level of care component within hospice. Now, one of the biggest things when it comes to talking to your providers as you are considering hospice, or your loved ones are considering it, or you're talking to friends who may be talking about it, and one of the biggest things is to break it down really simple and what are your priorities? What are your priorities? Do you want to continue with treatment? Do you want to continue with comfort? Those two don't always go together. Most of the time they don't. So having open, honest conversations as people are going through this and really honing in on those priorities. Sometimes with your hospice, they'll be like, my granddaughter's having a wedding. She's getting married in July. I really, really, really want to make that wedding. Okay. Letting everyone know what the priority is. This is the priority. So it might be April. It's above our pay grade to say when someone will die. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is there's a goal. Let's work for this goal if at all possible. And if everybody's on the team, everybody on that team understands what the goal is, it goes a lot smoother. So just having really open, honest communications with yourself, having open and honest communication with your loved ones, and recognizing what are my goals, or what are my goals for my loved one. So that's the other thing that really helps the team come together and work well together. Really quick, want to talk about what hospice looks like here at Springmore. So many of you may be aware that we have an angel room here at Stewart Health Center. But your goal may be to die in your home, and that's okay. That is okay. Just because you're here doesn't mean that that has to be the case. Now, what will happen and what has happened so far as I've worked with families is as this becomes something that is necessary, you would get with me and we would create a plan of care where we kind of go over everything and we talk about, like, once again, primary, what is the goal? What do you want? What do your loved ones want? And how can we make that happen? There's still, if you're in independent living, you are still responsible for certain aspects. Like, there's not going to be bedside nursing there. So if that means bringing in people to help give care, absolutely, that we can support that. If it means that someone is in their apartment or their home for a few months and then the caregiving gets to be too much and you need to come into the health center? Absolutely. It's a team approach. It's not one way or the other. And one solution is not going to be the same solution for every single resident. I've done it multiple different ways in the time I've been here so far. So recognize that, the conversation is an open conversation. And so don't be afraid to have that conversation with me is what I would encourage you to do, because we're going to create, like I said, a care plan that works the best. And so you guys are I know I have like just a small percentage of our population here. So all of you guys are my advertising committee, right? So you're talking to your friends and they're like, well, I have to go to the health center. I'm like, no, you have to call Charlotte. That's the only thing you have to do. That's all you got to do. And we'll get something together and we'll figure that out. So I don't want there to be, hospice is a really scary word, and has a really bad PR team. So does the health center. Health center's got a bad, scary, but it shouldn't, right? And because we can work together to make that a really positive. Death is scary, but death can be beautiful. I've gotten to see it. I've gotten to be a part of it. It is what I feel personally called to do, is to help people as they are in that journey. And it can be a really long journey, or it could be a really short journey. We're not really sure. So, but as far as Springmore is concerned, please understand that it's an open conversation, and that you would just come see me. So, yes, ma'am.
This does not mean that transitions or some other hospice is not included.
Oh, no. The care plan is, oh, yes.
That we have hospice and you.
Oh, most certainly. Yes, you are here. You're going to have, that's going to be part of the care plan now. And I have worked with people before they got involved with hospice, and we've talked through it to get to that point. And I've talked to them after they had already made that decision too. So it can go either way. But yes, you get double team. You get the double benefit. You get your Medicare hospice benefit, but then you also get the Springmore part of it, where we also can support you and create that care plan. So absolutely. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Does anyone else have any questions on the Springmore component? Okie doke. Well, then I'm going to hand it off to, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. Hospice care versus palliative care. Okay, I can do that too. So, palliative care is also a part of your hospice, your Medicare benefit. It is a Medicare benefit. It is a nurse practitioner who typically comes out every 6 to 8 weeks. And I also am going to let a little bit of palliative piece, because that man over there knows palliative better than I do, because I was in hospice. But it is not hands-on care. You do not have to stop treatment to be on palliative care. So if you are actively getting an oral chemo drug, or you are actively looking for a curative route, then palliative care can be involved. Hospice is when you've decided, I'm done with the curative model. I want comfort. I am ready for comfort. And so that is when hospice comes in. I will say one thing I want to talk about when hospice comes in is that one of the bad PR pieces of hospice is that we come in and we take you off all of your medicines and we won't treat you for anything. It's completely wrong. We are, however, going to do something that you may have never had done before. It's called the risk benefit on your medications. So they're going to look at every medication has a risk, right? There's not a single medication out there that doesn't have some form of a risk. So they're going to look at you and they're going to go, okay, your body has changed. Why do we need to take Lipitor to control your cholesterol? Because that's not a priority anymore, because that cholesterol medication is meant to control it for the next 10 to 20 years. We don't have that. We aren't looking at that, so why take that medication? Eliquis, big one. Why are we going to take Eliquis when you're at risk for falls? And if you fall, it's going to potentially do more damage than it's benefiting you. So that is something that happens, and there's a reason for it. It's not because hospice just wants to go in and take my stuff away. They're looking at it, they're looking at you in a different way than you've been looked at in previously, because everything else was curative. Now we're just saying, do you need to take 20 pills? It's more risk for aspiration. It takes a lot of effort to take a lot of pills. We want to conserve some energy. We want to look for life benefits, right? So it is a change of mindset. So I will say that. Hospice, can you come off of it? Absolutely. We discharge people all the time. And we'll let you come right back when you are ready for it again. So one thing that we see, I use this as a very common example, people get the flu, right? They get the flu, they're looking really bad, they're looking really peaked, and they get home and they get around their loved ones and everyone's caring on them and loving on them, and they come back and they're looking great and they're progressing. And guess what? We'll discharge you. Or, same thing with it. I've had it with cancer too. Sometimes with certain cancers, you kind of bottom out and then you start coming back up and you start looking really good and you plateau and you do really well until you can be discharged. And then if you go back and you need, start looking bad again, you can come back on too. I've had a patient on for 5 years. I've also had a patient that we discharged 3 times. Great. That's okay. We're here. Hospice is there for you when you need it and when you don't. And I've gotten people upset about being discharged from hospice, but I'm like, that's great. That means you're doing really, really well. So see the positive sometimes in things like that. But so that is... It's an ebb and flow, just like our health, right? Health is not status. It's constantly changing. And hospice will allow you to change. So does that help? Did I answer that? Any other questions? Okay. Well, then I'm going to hand it on to Dr. Marsh.
I just want to add one thing about the hospice versus palliative care. All hospice care is palliative care, but all palliative care is not hospice care. The hospice care has the government's definition of a person's prognosis is less than 6 months if the disease runs its normal course. Palliative care, there is no restriction. When I was doing palliative care medicine, I had plenty of young people that were on my palliative care service with excellent prognosis, but it was for symptom management, difficult to manage symptoms and control, not necessarily curative. I had one young man who had terrible diabetes with all kinds of the side effects of diabetes. He was on palliative care for his neuropathy, his nerve pain, and other issues. He was in his 30s. Hopefully he lives to be 90. So that's just another part of it. It's all about symptom care. It's more or less about, you know why. There's the saying that the prognosis is 6 months sort of flips you over into the hospice category. My name is Steve Marsh. I'm a transporter over here. And before I did that, I was doing my easier jobs, which was I was a family practice doctor in Zebulon for about 15 or 16 years. And then I also decided I wanted to do hospice and palliative care, so I went back to school and got certified in hospice and palliative care, and I worked for several of the hospice agencies in the area for the last 13 or 14 years until I retired. And I just wanted to, my colleagues have just really expressed very well about hospice care. I just wanted to add a few things, maybe emphasize a few things. And I want to ask you all, well, first of all, I want to tell you a story, because it's time for a story, right? Y'all have been sitting for a long time. I have a friend, his name is Joe. And I saw Joe the other day. He said, I have an interesting story to tell you. He said, a couple of weeks ago, I went out to eat, and I went to this restaurant. You know, I was hungry. It was supper time. So I went, and they sat me at a table, and waiter came out and brought me some water and brought me some bread. I was waiting on a menu. Finally, he comes back, and he's got 3 darts. You know, when you play darts with the dartboard? He hands Joe the darts. Joe says, what are those for? The waiter points up in the ceiling, and there's 3 big hunks of meat nailed up to the top of the ceiling. He says, there's a T-bone up there, there's a porterhouse, there's a ribeye, and a New York strip. Joe says, what do I do with these? He says, we got a special. You throw the dart up there, and whatever piece of meat you hit's what we cook, and you get it for free. Joe handed him the darts back. He said, sir, I can't do that. Waiter said, why not? He says, the stakes are too high. And when it comes to end-of-life care, the stakes are high. I think you all understand that. I think it's extremely, just to emphasize what everybody's already said, tell your loved ones, tell your spouse, tell your children, tell your grandchildren, whoever you want to tell, what it is that you want to happen toward the end of your life, if at all possible. I get the sense that most of you all, raise your hand if you're a planner. You've planned most of your life. You know, most of you planned your education, what you're going to do after high school. You're going to get a job, you go in the military, you go into college. Then you plan your marriage, your children, where you're going to live, where you're going to work. It's kind of silly not to plan your death. And I don't feel uncomfortable talking to you all about that, because I get a sense that you all understand that. But some of the younger generation, they're afraid to talk about dying. If you've planned a good life and you've had a good life, I think everybody deserves a good death. And you have control over that. We talked about advance directives, so critically important, because there comes a time when you may not be able to tell your loved ones what you want. And you don't want to put that burden on your loved ones. What did mama want? What did daddy want? Are we doing this right? Are we doing that right? Some of the younger folks don't want to talk about it. Maybe some of you older folks, or us older folks, sorry about that, but don't want to talk about it. But it's so vitally important to talk about that. And I just want to emphasize that. The other thing I want to tell you about, and along the same lines, is regarding hospice care. They've done surveys in the past, and it's very interesting to note that people, after they get to a certain age, are not afraid of dying. You know, people, what are you afraid of? Most people are afraid of dying alone and dying in pain. The hospice team, which they've talked about, is uniquely equipped to prevent both of those things. The hospice team, I cannot overemphasize how important they are. Everybody on that team is specialized in end-of-life care. If you're on hospice, you will not die alone. You will not die without your symptoms being controlled, or at very least, there will be effort after effort after effort to prevent troublesome symptoms. So I encourage you to take advantage of those team members and use their expertise. I just briefly want to say that from a physician standpoint, the hospice doctor works in conjunction with, this has already been mentioned, but it's important. Some people say, I don't want to give up my doctor. You don't have to. Your primary care doctor is a vitally important part of the team. Now, some of them, at a certain point, want to hand it over to the specialist. And hospice physicians and hospice team members are specialists, just like you have a cardiologist or a neurologist or a gastroenterologist, and they'll turn it over. But some of them are very, very much involved. Dr. Edmondson was very much involved. So we would work in conjunction with him. As the hospice doctor, I would be in charge of the team. We have nurse practitioners on the team. We have the RN case managers, which was Charlotte was talking about, who are sort of the everyday leaders of the team. Including that team we already mentioned are the RN case managers, the CNAs, the spiritual care people, the volunteer, and the social work. Use these people. They're very important. My social worker friends are so vitally important because they can help you wind your way through this red tape that's out there, even when we're dying. There's red tape. So I want you to think about that. I want you to make sure that you have that all set up with your advanced directives. And when the time comes, think about it. Think about hospice care, if needed. And another reason I say that is because there's some, maybe not as bad as there used to be. There used to be some rumors about hospice care. How many of y'all have heard that, oh, they've called in hospice for Mr. So-and-so. That means they're going to come in and pull the shades down and draw the curtains and start shooting him up with morphine. Doesn't happen. I just cannot emphasize. They've done studies that show that people who are on hospice care actually have a much better time left. Nobody knows how much longer we're going to live than people that are on hospice care.
However, morphine is offered.
Yes. Oh, yes. No, yeah, exactly. But it's. I should emphasize we control pain. We control pain however we need to control it, and according to what the patient wants. And the family wants, but mostly the patient, because the patient is the one that's experiencing the pain. But there are many other symptoms that we manage: shortness of breath, abdominal problems, lack of appetite, constipation, all that can't sleep too much. All of those symptoms are important. Another one is that, and I'll speak to my spiritual care coordinators, my chaplain. We call them spiritual care coordinators, because chaplain sounds like they're walking around, but they are some of the most funny, most pleasant, most crazy people I've ever met. And they just come in and they make you smile, they're just good people. Avail yourself of them. The other thing I want to say is I just want to emphasize the fact that you can graduate. That's already been mentioned. Nothing is etched in stone. If you sign up for hospice on Monday morning and decide by Tuesday afternoon that you're not interested in it, you just tear up the paper and call them and say, I don't want you all. I need you all right now. There's nothing that says you have to stay with it. And you can graduate if your prognosis. The thing about prognosis is, it's all the statistics, but we don't all neatly fall under the bell curve. Some of us are way out here and some of us are over here. And if a person has a cancer, that chances are you're not going to live more than 6 months. I've had people that live way on out here, like Charlotte said. You may be able to go off hospice. The whole goal is for comfort and care. Our goals change a little bit. We change from curative to comfort and care. And that doesn't mean that we give up hope. But instead of hoping for 5 years down the road, we hope that this week is a good week. We hope that this month is a good month. And make it down to we hope that the next hour is a good hour that's free of any kind of troubling symptom. And if you think about it, that's a good thing if we can alleviate those problems. So I'll stop talking. I want to tell y'all another joke. The man went to see his doctor, and the doctor knocks on the door of the exam room, and he looks in there, and the man's sitting up on the exam table, and he's got a stalk of celery crammed in this ear, and a banana stuck in this ear, and a carrot stuck up his nose. The doctor says, what in the world? The man says, doctor, you got to help me. This is a good old wise country doctor. He says, I know exactly what's wrong with you, sir. The patient says, what's wrong with me? The doctor says, you don't eat right. Any questions?
Well, thank you each so much. And if you have any questions right now, we have just a couple minutes before the hour.
I'd like to know what's happened. I'm a retired physician and worked with one guy who didn't believe in hospice for all his many years, and I'm not sure how many people he ever sent to the hospice. How much is that still a problem? I'm sure it's less than it was in the dark ages. I've been retired for 11 years, but that's a long time ago now.
Yeah.
The other thing is.
How much is it a problem of doctors not wanting to
the
recommend?
Doctors not wanting
To recommend?
They can't take the loss of
Mm,
the patient's life, because that's their issue.
Yeah,
They won't admit
yes, sir.
it, but that's their issue.
Yeah,
I think that's much less of a problem than it was. There's still a few outliers out there.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know it's improved, and it's improved.
There, yeah,
Some of my oncology friends want to keep pushing.
yeah,
And like you say, I think they take that personally.
yeah.
When you get to your fifth round of course of chemo, it may be time to think of it.
Yeah, I've only worked with one, and it was an oncology doctor in Shelby that was very aggressive and wanted to do every last thing he possibly could for his patients. And yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure it's better.
And then,
I also think it's important to understand that per Medicare, you can self-refer.
Oh, yeah.
You
That's
can
right.
self-refer, so if you feel like you are hospice appropriate, even if your doctor does not. Now, I'm not saying that that means that the hospice doctor is gonna put you on when they review your chart, but you can self-refer.
yeah, yeah. Anyone can make a hospice referral.
What is
Anyone.
the average number of days before end of life now? It used to be, or admission before end of life used to be, what, 2 to 4 days or something?
Okay, yeah. The question, the question is,
Get into hospice
what,
today, how much has that improved?
yeah, what is the typical length of stay, the average length that someone is served by a hospice prior to their death? I think you were saying when you were practicing, it was just a couple days or less than a week.
It's much longer.
Yeah.
It's much longer than that now. I don't know exactly, but it's in the weeks or months. And that's because you all who have dealt with hospice are getting the word out. And the thought among hospice providers is the earlier we can intervene to help our folks, the better it is. Like I said, they have done studies to show that a person with two people with the same type of cancer do much better under hospice care than they do without hospice care. So early is better. Now, you can always try. That doesn't necessarily mean that you meet the criteria, the patient, but you can try. And most likely, the admitting nurse will say, well, let's readdress this in a month or 6 months or a week or whenever. But it's much improved as far as length of stay.
Well, thank y'all all so much. I will add that,
One question. I want to clarify. I want to clarify that hospice care here at Springmore is separate than Springmore care. Is that correct?
absolutely. Hospice is provided by its own provider, just like your eye doctor or your cardiologist. It's its own service that comes in addition to anything else you have going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a true story for Steve.
I've got to do this. Beverly was a long-time excellent hospice volunteer, and one of our kids, our middle child, who's the younger son, went to school in our town. He came home one time. He was living on the dorms and apartments and so forth, but came home one day and walked in and saw a sheet of chocolate chip cookies being prepared. And he reached over and grabbed one and picked it up. And Beverly had been in the habit of always taking a sack of about a dozen chocolate chip cookies to her patients that she was working with. And Greg walked in and she said, "Put that down. Those are for my cancer patients." And he said, "My gosh, Mom, you got to have cancer to get a cookie around this house."
Well, I thank y'all all so much for your participation, and do know that we are all here. We are Springmore employees and happy to receive your questions ongoing, indefinitely in the future. So stop us, call us, email us anytime. We would love to help you navigate or just wonder about this. Yes.
I have a question for
on hospice, you would not die alone. And one of the other people said it's 24/7, you can call anytime. And the reason I'm asking, I had a horrendous experience with hospice. We both did, and in 2 different states. And I couldn't get, I was one of the people that it was like several days that my mom was dying. And they came out, signed me up and everything, and they called me from the nursing home and said that my mom might not make it through the next day. And I could not get hospice to come out that day. So she basically, other than when I got to the facility, there was nobody there. And I called hospice. It was here in Raleigh. And I called them and I said, you have made an agreement. We signed a contract. Why aren't you here? And their answer was that they didn't guarantee to be there at certain hours. And I said, my mom is in the process, in a matter of hours, of dying. I said, get over here.
Well, thank you for let me clarify that. I'm sorry that you had that experience. We don't know when we're going to die in general. But having said that, and I should re-clarify, but if someone is, such as your mother, is in that state, when I was a hospice doctor, I could promise you that somebody would be out there. My team, I was in charge of several teams, and we would go to any extreme to get anybody out there. We have people on call 24/7, including all different types. Now, if someone has Alzheimer's and they fall down the steps and just like they're falling in the bathroom, then of course we won't be there. But if someone is in a steady decline and we are called,
One other thing that you said, this person told me they were in a meeting, and I said, I don't care you're in a meeting, send someone else out, and they wouldn't.
well, again, I have been on the receiving end of those calls, and there have been times when I was the first person out, and I had a territory that stretched from just south of Emporia all the way down to Sanford, and from Spring Hope to Pittsburgh. So that's shrunk now, but we make every effort to be. We made every effort to be there. Again, if we don't know if you drop dead of a heart attack, then I can't promise that. But I should clarify that if there is a chronic decline, and then the case manager, the nurse that comes out there, will tell us the patient is in the active phase of dying.
Is it possible that y'all could stay for a few minutes after we've closed? And if you have other questions or other comments that you'd like to make, they'll stay here for a little while. Is that okay? Let's give them all a big hand, please. I was hired at the YMCA by the man by the name of Wyatt Taylor. How many of you knew Wyatt? Some of you did, I know. Wyatt had lots of sayings, all of which were good, but the one that I'm thinking of now is he said, things don't just happen. Somebody has to make them happen. And I want to thank you for being willing to make this happen today. You did a great job. Another hand, please. Excuse me. Charlotte, come up, please. I want to say thank you by presenting you with something. Now, you're at Camp Kanata too, right?
I am.
This is one of our camps where she serves as a camp nurse. And I know how important that is, having been at Camp Seagull for 25 years. A little memento to say thank you for what you did today.
Thank you.
And the money will come later.
Brandon, right? Awesome.
Give her another hand quickly, please. Okay. I'm sorry. Dr. Marsh, would you come up? You know, I rode over here with you one time, and I didn't even recognize you. I apologize. Seeing your side view is not like seeing your front view, but thank you. Oh. Now, why was that funny? But this is an expression of appreciation to you for being here. We appreciate it so much. And I'm going to be looking for more rides. All right. Okay. Elizabeth, you come back up here too. And thank you so much for being here and your presentation. All of them were very good, and we appreciate it. Justin, I think we have one for you as well. Thank you for not only doing this, but he organized this thing, folks, and thank you for being here all the time. And every time you look at that, think of us. And I want to take time to let you know that this happens in other ways every day. Sylvia Doles, would you please come up here? Come on now. Carol Bryant, come up here. Jim Bundy, come here. Come on, folks, don't be so shy. Give them a hand to get them up here. For Carol and for Sylvia, on this appreciation gift says the ticket presenters for the Springmore resident monthly meetings. And that they had to make that. Y'all all like that thing, don't you? Even though you don't always win, it's exciting. Carol and Sylvia, thank you. And Jim makes this film available for everybody to watch. Thank you so much, Jim. Right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. One more thing. I am as excited as I can be about all the programs we've had this year, but ending up in November, that'll be my last program, we're going to have the James Webb Telescope, Space Telescope presentation. And I have seen this presentation at a Rotary meeting, and is that anything we need to be concerned about? Huh? No? Okay. What, Jim? Sir? Thank you. Turn that off, please, sir. Thank you. You won't, if you have not seen anything from this telescope, you won't believe your eyes. So not only y'all return, but bring your other friends who may not be here today, because this will be a highlight of the year, I think. And thank you.
What's the date of that one?
That's November the 13th. 4 days before my birthday.
4 days before mine.
Before your birthday, and don't send us cards, send us money.
Thank you for the program, all four of you. I guess we all have some reflection on what our last stage of life will be, with our goals, with our fears, with our sense of losses. I had the privilege of knowing and being a lifetime friend of the man I was named for. And at his 95th birthday, someone asked him, said, Lim, you've been quoted as saying that you are not afraid to die. Do you still feel that way? And he said, I think I might have been misquoted. I can honestly say I'm not afraid of being dead, but dying's another question. I'm afraid that might hurt. So the whole hospice situation is to help relieve that pain in whatever ways possible. We have a drawing for our door prizes. So, Charlotte, would you choose one of out of that basket,
Don't hold it against me, guys.
and I will read the number. The number is 777386. Right back in the middle.
I hope it's Halloween candy for you to pass out to your neighbors.
And the next number is 1480819. Right over here. Okay. Thank you all for coming. I'll declare us adjourned, and our next meeting will be November the 13th, and that will be our last meeting of the year. No meeting in December. Thank you.